shifted very much to your point. The Democratic Party has shapeshifted and driven him away and alienated his followers.
I think what he ended up seeing was an American political sphere that shifted, and he found ways. He's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. He found ways to walk into where those people were. Yes, he was a proud, ultra leftist, and then he became a proud person on the right, largely because he saw shifting towards the right, and that's where his money and his audience could come from. Mm-hmm. He shifted because more of his listeners shifted, and that's where he drove it to. That's nothing more than consumerism at work.
Of his
more consumer opportunist. That's what I like to call it. And so something that I would never do myself is tell someone that they need to be Democrat forever. Like, just don't care about what the politicians are saying. Don't care about policies or whatever that you're looking for in a politician or a party to fit your needs. That doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? It's like going to a car lot and just basing whatever you're going to buy off of your friends, like, a car that they want to drive. Like, no, whatever fits your personality, your work life, whatever you're going to be doing out on the road, you need to choose a car that's best for you, obviously. So when it comes to being a Republican, Democrat, other people's reasoning, you can listen to it and try to get some sense of it. But at the end of the day, the decision is up to you. And when it comes to Joe Rogan, and a lot of people have been kind of talking about this now, is how Joe Rogan was once a Democrat, which I do remember him, endorsing Bernie Sanders out of all people, endorsing Bernie Sanders and now endorsing Trump, like wholeheartedly. It does bring up some good conversation. But one thing people really have to understand, okay? People usually, 9 times out of 10, I don't want to say every person that's wealthy or got a lot of money, but 9 times out of 10, if you listen to them on whatever policies that really, get them to, go Democrat or Republican, but mainly when it's Republican, it always has to do with taxes. It always has to do with the price of this for them. And, they're millionaires. This guy right here, I'm not trying to pocket watch nobody, but I'm pretty sure he has nothing really to worry about. Like regular folks. The price of eggs, he probably doesn't even know the price of eggs. Okay, let's be honest. So usually when people like this here complain about prices, they're talking about things that's out of me and your imagination. I can't even imagine paying taxes on 3 homes, okay? Like, that's out of my realm of expertise. So when people listen to people like Joe Rogan talk about the economy is bad and things are getting expensive, blah, 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 he's talking about his world, his Joe Rogan universe, which is he's making millions of dollars. He's not talking about the same high prices that me and you are talking about, okay? So that is important to understand. So let's go ahead and go to good old CNN.
To be clear, Republicans argue about their message all the time. And I think I grew up with right-wing radio and obviously Rush Limbaugh. There's always been a robust right-wing media ecosystem. And the question I have is how much of this is actually about audience and what you will allow? Meaning the campaign didn't let Kamala Harris sit for 3 hours. And I don't think the campaign would have put her in front of Theo Vaughn to talk about his cocaine habit. Like, Democrats have a different sense of like what's okay to do.
That's actually precisely the point. However, Bernie Sanders had no problem going on Joe Rogan years ago when Joe Rogan endorsed him. Mm-hmm. I've been on Rogan's show 3 times. I've probably heard over 100 hours of it in the past decade. A decade ago, Joe Rogan was a Bernie Sanders supporter who would get emotional talking about how important it is to legalize marijuana, who would get emotional talking about how important it is to get Christianity out of politics, in particular on the abortion issue, who had a host of left-wing opinions, including about healthcare, and liberals drove him away by calling him a racist.
Okay, so that's the point number one I want to discuss is that really a thing? Like, is it really such a thing to where people, not like politicians and their bad policies or, we found out that Joe Biden is like some sort of evil person. Like, no, it's always like the voters or people online that claim to be Democrats pushed them away to be Republicans. What does that really mean? I need someone to elaborate. If you know what that means, let me know in the comments. But like, I don't know if you can be pushed into a party that has essentially polar opposite when it comes to political values and policies. Like, if Joe Rogan was really, which in my opinion, I don't really think he was, which they're going to allude to is, I don't think he was a Bernie supporter. I think he was just a bandwagoner, if that's a word. He was just riding on a bandwagon. During that time, during 2016 and a little 2020, a lot of people were talking about Bernie Sanders. And there was a lot of hype behind him. So just like anyone in media, they're going to go along with it. So like, but to get pushed out of a party, and now, you know, the Republican Party has no platform of decriminalizing marijuana. But that's what Joe is passionate, or was passionate about. Joe is passionate about taking religion out of like schools and things like that, and not letting religion dictate policies. But now he's literally with the party that's trying to do that. I don't get the switch. So either A, he really got bullied into becoming a totally different person when it comes to politics, or he was never that person to begin with. And what made him want to switch, maybe he was making too much money. I think he did live in California and then moved to Florida, and always talking about taxes and blah, blah. Like, you don't want to be honest and say you just didn't want to pay the high taxes? I mean, but, you know, let's go ahead and continue.
Unearthing jokes he made, calling him a misogynist, really with no evidence.
When you make racist
calling him
jokes
a transphobe,
about people of color,
calling him, a
people
lot
calling
of
you
comedians
racist is likely going to
jokes
happen.
all the time. Calling him transphobic because he didn't like
He
seeing
also didn't
Fallon
love the
Fox
vaccine thing, right?
beating up,
To our point earlier.
That also.
So once again, Joe Rogan is a comedian. If you make good jokes, people are still going to find a way to complain about it. Okay, me personally, if it's good and if it's funny, if it doesn't, you know, have some truth to it, I'm going to laugh. Okay, I'm not going to get all butthurt, but like, if it's a bad joke, people are going to complain about it. So the whole being a comedian is not really an excuse. Like, you know what you're getting into. If you want to make some race jokes, kind of be prepared for that. If you want to make religious jokes, don't be surprised if some people don't find it funny. You know, so once again, that's not really, at least to me, for someone like Joe Rogan, who puts his opinions out there every single day and people are criticizing him every single minute. So that's going to lead him to switch his political beliefs like that. Once again, I don't believe it.
It used to be a left-wing opinion to be against vaccines like 20 years ago. Again, so he actually hasn't.
And no, I don't remember Democrats being anti-vaccine. Now, I do understand the history with black folks in this country when it comes to vaccines and, white supremacist ideas and thoughts will kind of abuse that. So yeah, I do understand that. But as a Democratic Party as a whole, I don't think they were ever anti-vax. I'm not sure if that's what he was alluding to, but I don't recall that.
Shapeshifted very much to your point. The Democratic Party has shapeshifted and driven him away and alienated his followers.
I think what he ended up seeing was an American political sphere that shifted, and he found ways. He's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. He found ways to walk into where those people were. Yes, he was a proud, ultra leftist, and then he became a proud person on the right, largely because he saw shifting towards the right, and that's where his money and his audience could come from. Mm-hmm. He shifted because more of his listeners shifted, and that's where he drove it to. That's nothing more than consumerism at work.
Which of his beliefs?
Wow, more consumer opportunist. That's what I like to call it. And maybe, and this is just me trying to put together some pieces here. At a point, and this is when I was really a huge Joe Rogan fan, when he would invite interesting people that, I grew up listening to, and that's what kind of drew people towards him. It's like, hey, you're having these interesting conversations with all types of people, But then slowly it started becoming this weird, like, conspiracy theory. Nothing is really based in facts and nothing, just like literally shooting the shit. Like, you're literally sitting there with your friend, smoking weed, just coming up with all kind of things. That's what it kind of turned into. And for me, people like me, it kind of gets turned off. Like, I don't want to hear weird conversations. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not what I'm into. And I think his audience changed. You know, like it took people out like me who don't want to hear wacko, you know, conspiracies. And it invited those Trump supporters who all they base their information is conspiracy theories. So now he knows, hey, I'm making some money. You know, I'm constantly being on the news. This is good money. So now he's comfortable. So that's my opinion.
Beliefs changed in the past 10 years. It's really hard to point out which of his beliefs.
But can I zoom out from him? Because I think there is this, and I see you nodding as well, this kind of bigger question. Like, you have a Jon Stewart, right? You have Pod Save America. You have all kinds of
Conan
even
O'Brien,
the late night, television brigade.
They're all left on the late night shows. I think what he said to me, what rings true about this whole concept of finding the liberal Joe Rogan is, he said, inauthentic. And when you talked about what Kamala Harris did in this campaign, knocking on doors, doing it sort of the traditional way, right? Raising tons of money. But there's something about Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, or Joe Rogan or whomever, they are authentic.
Right.
Totally.
And that comes through to people. And when you're...
And I don't know. I would slightly have to disagree, because one thing that I kind of noticed, even with myself doing social media, making, I guess you could say, progressive content, it's not sexy. It's really nothing fun for the average person. Like, for folks like me that just love politics and just really love to get into the details, that's interesting to me. But for regular folks, they don't really care. They're not going to click on my videos. They're not going to subscribe to me. Only those who really care about the details do that. But with Joe Rogan, he invites more regular people and they get exposed to politics. They're not going to, most of them, at least in my opinion, they're not going to Joe Rogan for politics. They're going to him because he talked to Madonna one day, or he talked to, I don't know, will.i.am, just some random people. And then the next episode, he has a Matt Walsh, or he has a Ben Shapiro. You know what I'm saying? Like, then they kind of just get into it without, like, purposely wanting to get into it, if that makes sense. You know, so once again, I think people really need to be careful of trying to figure out why people like Joe Rogan switch parties and, you know, the Democratic Party changed. Like, not really. Like, they're still ran by a bunch of elitists that only want to keep the status quo because that's what their shareholders, that's what their, you know, big spenders are worried about. So they're gonna try to keep that without, you know, ruffling any feathers, I guess you could say. But they're not progressive by far, like not even a little bit, you know. So we need to be careful on how we're trying to engage in that narrative. And be honest, rich folks don't want to pay a lot of money, even though they got a lot of money. They don't want to pay a lot of money. So it's that simple. So once again, if you guys agree or disagree with anything that I said in this video, let me know in the comments down below, or hit that Discord link so me and you can have that one-on-one conversation. And like always, let's have that conversation.